Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I mean, you would think the biggest story of this week would be that I'm in a brand new location here. Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit to get all the kinks ironed out of this setup, but here we are. But it also turns out that Billboard also picked this week to have an absolute shit show. Not just through their tuning and rebalancing of their sales metrics, but also because in what looks like a back-end nightmare, it led to a brand new and hotly contested #1 that frankly seemed to come out of nowhere. And you know what? We're gonna start there in the top 10 right now, because while I've been insanely busy the past couple of days for other very obvious reasons, and I might have even fallen out of the loop here, even then this kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. Our new #1, Franchise by Travis Scott featuring Young Thug and M.I.A, debuting at #1. I'll talk more about the song's actual quality later, but to me this seems like the textbook example of a song artificially boosted to the very top on an overstuffed sales push and enough driven on the radio and streaming that it could eke out a win by a single week over Dynamite by BTS at #2. Not that this song is innocent of such tactics either, courtesy of all the gimmickry that comes with the remixes on the sales charts, and at this point, I just throw up my hands and look at all of it with a certain amount of unbridled disgust. Yes, caring about the glorified stat pad accomplishment that is the Billboard Hot 100 #1 is something that a lot of us care about, a lot more than we probably should, but here, it's not even about the accomplishment of getting to the #1, but sustaining success in a way that doesn't reflect the song's legitimate, authentic groundswell. I didn't like it when Lil Nas X played the remix game either, but at least he had the cultural groundswell at the time to chase a record and was trying to recontextualize the song with weird or interesting instrumental choices or collaborators, whereas the BTS remixes just feel like stand bait. Again, Franchise is doing something very similar in its collaboration, and the way it got its #1 does feel kind of gimmicky, and it'll probably be very quickly forgotten, but it's only a little bit less hollow. Now, all this overtook WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion at #3, and if there's a part of me that feels like there is a song that took its #1 with real consistent traction and held its own, it's probably this. Not great sales, but again, monstrous streaming, solid radio. It'll wind up sticking around when the sales of songs above it eventually dry up. Similar case for, I can't believe I'm saying it, Laugh Now, Cry Later by Drake featuring Lil Durk at #4. I don't like this, the radio is slowing down, and Drake is no stranger to questionable streaming metrics, but as of now, it does have traction in multiple channels to hold its own. Frankly, I'm just sticking up for Mood by 24kGoldn and Ian Dior at #5. Legit groundswell across the board, and while it also has an industry push, I would be more enthused by this being successful than a lot else above it. Then we have Blinding Lights by The Weeknd regain a spot up to #6 thanks to a shocking radio resurgence. Yeah, another one, but likely more because Rockstar by DaBaby and Roddy Ricch is continuing to collapse at #7 in all categories, especially on the radio. Now, this is where Savage Love by Josh 685 and Jason Derulo actually did a thing, rising up to #8, only for what looks like it's gas on the radio to finally start giving out. So while it overtook Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles down at #9, that song's in the downswing in all channels. It's not that huge of an accomplishment. Finally, thanks to the radio and sales, we've got I Hope by Gabby Barrett at #10. I should note that she's gotten some success courtesy of the remix with Charlie Puth, who is now credited on it. And I'm not gonna lie, he's kinda great on the song in the same way that Juice WRLD was on the remix of Halsey's Without Me. He makes the song better, but also not quite enough to justify me giving Gabby Barrett much more attention. Anyway, our losers and dropouts, and there are 3 considerable ones this week. Say So by Doja Cat and Nicki Minaj, Savage by Megan Thee Stallion and Beyonce, and Blueberry Faygo by Lil Mosey. Considering that all 3 of these will easily clinch their year-end list spots, I'm inclined to say they had a good run. I'm fine with this. And honestly, I kind of feel the same about a lot of our losers here as well. Yeah, it's not great that Diamonds by Sam Smith took a hit down to 70. I think the song will rebound in coming weeks. It happens off the debut. And more importantly, it also happened to One Too Many by Keith Urban and Pink at 99. Then we get the continued losses for Like That by Doja Cat and Gucci Mane down to 82. And Said Some by Moneybagg Yo off of all of its gains down to 36. Good. Finally, to balance out the net win of Cool Again by Kane Brown falling down to 45, we also had Rain on Me by Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande sliding to 55. Again, reaching the end of a good run, it'll have a year-end list spot, and I seem like I'm one of the few people who still kind of likes this song, so I'm fine overall with this. It's still pretty good. But in our returns and gains, look, I do not know why Niall Horan is hopping on remixes instead of pushing many of the excellent songs from his album earlier this year, but he's on one of Moral of the Story with Ash, and that came back to 98, so I guess it's fine. Meanwhile, the vast majority of our gains seem to be following on from last week, with the exception of Blind by DaBaby and Young Thug getting the boost up to 85. I kind of predicted it, but it doesn't mean I like it. And again, most of these are once again country. Outside of What You Know About Love by Pop Smoke up to 40, we got Everywhere But On by Matt Stell at 69, Ain't Always the Cowboy by John Party at 66, and Love You Like I Used To by Russell Dickerson at 65. Looks like Nashville's rotating in the full playlist from the looks of things. Finally, connected to the small album bomb we actually got from Machine Gun Kelly this week, My Ex's Best Friend with Black Bear is up to 28. I mean, I'm not sure how long it's going to be sustained, but as I said, the song kind of grew on me in a weird way, and I would not be averse if some of that forward momentum actually continued, because again, the song's kind of really good, and I'm shocked I'm admitting that. Now, of course, since Billboard is late here, and they probably shouldn't have laid off their entire IT team if the site's gonna shit the bed with such regularity, I mean, such a brain trust over there, I gotta say, but that's been a situation with Billboard for years now. Naturally, we've got a pretty stacked week of new arrivals. Unfortunately, starting with number 97, Money Over Fallouts by Tory Lanez.
That's who I believe. Man, the best thing for Tory Lanez is, for real, he needs to just be gone. I'm done with this. You gotta know the truth.
Trash. I shouldn't have to say more, but I will say it's very telling that after Megan Thee Stallion got shot by Tory Lanez for stupid as hell reasons, and then she provided some pretty rational explanations for why everything happened and was involved, and why she had protected him before then, Tory Lanez tried to gaslight everyone on a song that was the equivalent of a "nah, it wasn't me, brah," and apparently a fairly large section of his listening public, specifically his male listening public, bought it. I could go on and make the obvious Chris Brown comparison and say that misogynoir is a thing, and that Tory Lanez has been thoroughly derivative and mediocre his entire career, and that likely includes the Chicks tapes, but I'm listening to the intro here. I hear Maul from the Joe Budden podcast get sampled, and now I'm annoyed because I'm now stuck agreeing with his dumbass. But then we get to the song as it is. I mean, the piano line, the beat's not bad, but Tory Lanez is doing a bad Meek Mill impression as he tries to wriggle out of this by way of flexing, claiming all sorts of conspiracy theories, and pointing fingers. And I'm left wondering how even Chris Brown, of all people, did this better. Graffiti is a terrible fucking album that tries to make all sorts of bad excuses, but at least he tried to convey some sense of remorse along the way. Whereas Tory Lanez tries to poke holes in the evidence that already has explanations, he puts Kalani's name in his mouth, fuck you, and then thinks it's a smart idea for his career to reference Jay-Z backing Megan Thee Stallion. I mean, you would try to impugn her character in the same verse while implying she's still totally into you. She's not. Whereas then you go to reference your goddamn gun again, and you want to call out Jay-Z. Are you so stupid as to not know what Jay-Z did behind the scenes to Chris Brown's career for a solid goddamn year after the Rihanna incident, and now you want to say something, you sniveling coward? I mean, this might not be the worst non-confession I've ever heard, because I Admit by R. Kelly somehow exists. You should also ask how someone like Jay-Z dealt with R. Kelly's bullshit while they were on tour in the early 2000s. That's a fun story to revisit. But you know what? This is up there. And you know what, Tory Lanez, when you inevitably get deported back to Toronto, well, you'll go back to clout chasing Drake because your touring opportunities are gonna start drying up fast. Look, Megan's a superstar with real hits. You're a derivative wannabe that'll be forgotten in 5 years. And oh yeah, this is trash. Number 96, Put Your Records On by Ritt, Momney. So I'll be honest here, I never really loved the original Put Your Records On by Connie Bailey Rae. I mean, it's a fine enough slice of easy listening, it's chill, it's obviously not targeted at me, I get the appeal, but it's one of those songs that wound up on radio repeat in the mid-2000s. It just fell into the background more often than not. So obviously what we need is a Francis and the Lights-esque cover by a guy with the stage name of Ritt Momney. Let me make this clear, this cover is bad in a number of ways that drive me off the wall, even beyond the auto-tune, the blocky clattering of percussion, and how the groove is nowhere near as liquid or smooth, instead trying to lean into more some choppy staccato keys and tempo changes that match with nothing. Oh no, what might be actually worse here is the recontextualization of this coming from a male singer. What was previously a breezy bit of light empowerment now has this undercurrent of a longing hookup vibe that isn't nearly smooth enough to pull it off, made all more of an issue by the bridge. In the original, she's talking to herself and her doubts and her questions where she can eventually just move on, put it aside, relax. Whereas here, it's framed as though he's addressing her. It's just horribly awkward. So no, I don't get the charm or the vibes from this. Even for a song I never really cared about, this is a really bad cover. Next, number 95, Good Time by Niko.
Right. Everybody singing Dixieland delight, like a barber on a wet line. We just trying to catch a good time.
Are we just choosing to get all the shit out of the way here early? My god. Okay, I've been aware of this song for a decent bit through the grapevine, mostly because I heard it was another attempt to revive the zombified corpse of bro country, now with trap snares and hi-hats. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. A clunky fusion of trap snares with leaden bass and acoustic guitar for a laid-back, chill song that has no unique ideas nor delivery. I've been complaining about these sort of cuts for years now. But the problem with Good Time is one that used to be all over mainstream country around the turn of the decade, but that I haven't heard in a while. This noxious, self-satisfied mugging tone that feels really insufferable in a surprisingly clumsy way. It reminds me way too much of Jason Mraz's I'm Yours. I mean, thankfully this has been dropped at a time of the year where I do not expect this to last. It's more of a summer song. So, you know what? Let's just move on. Number 94, Ay Dios Mio by Karol G. I knew this song was coming courtesy of those worldwide charts that Billboard is now publishing, but now that Karol G is not stuck with Nicki Minaj promoting a single, how is this? Honestly, I'm not quite sure what to think about it. It starts off with this weird, spongy key tap of percussion off a very restrained backing melody, but before long, the trap-adjacent reggaeton groove slides in, and I'm just feeling that this is an awfully dreary and washed-out song, which I guess makes a certain sort of perverse sense, given that this song is about how she apparently formed a relationship with Annuel AA, which I'll admit I discovered it's been going on board for a while. I was not aware, but even still, it's not particularly passionate or enticing outside of her delivery. A song like this should be designed to reinforce a lot of our interest in this couple, and while she is mostly selling it, from what I could translate of the content, the lyrics, and the music behind this, there's just not that much that really grabs me. I mean, it certainly does not match the exclamation of the song's title, but outside of that, you know what, just more forgettable than bad. I'd move on. Number 93, Big Plans by Chris Lane.
On some hand-me-down land. Find a little island where we go to get tan. Bet we take our kids down there one day.
So I'll say this again, I liked Chris Lane's Fix You way more than I probably should have, but even I am still kinda stunned he's got a facsimile of a career that's still going, given that his materials remain pretty sterile and forgettable ever since. Now, alright, I guess in comparison, this might be a bit better. It certainly feels more organic, courtesy of the thicker guitar and some of the pedal steel, but what on earth is up with the positioning of those snares on the hook? They constantly seem like they're disrupting all of those big plans that he's talking about on that hook, which makes the entire song feel weirdly jerky and reinforces that frustratingly synthetic feel that he doesn't need for a song like this. But outside of that, look, he's building up to ask his girl to marry him, and it does feel kind of genuine and sincere in his dreaming. And I like the details in the first verse that imply that they are a couple that have gotten comfortable with each other for a while, and that's kind of better than the immediate grab for the ring the second they meet the person. But outside of that, while I've heard worse proposal songs in boyfriend country, I've also heard a few that are better. Just doesn't make much of an impact with me. That's all. Number 91, Drunk Face by Machine Gun Kelly.
Next summer, I'm back on that girl I quit. I should have lost her number.
So when I said that Machine Gun Kelly got an album bomb, I was kind of exaggerating. He got 3 new songs on the Hot 100, and let's talk about the weakest one. Now, you would think some of this would come out of that trap skitter that opens up the song's first hook, but honestly, when it smashes into Travis Barker on the drums, who is way more aggressive, it kind of fits the half-formed swagger of the song, where you can clearly tell that Machine Gun Kelly is stumbling through all manner of bad decisions right now, where he is barely in control and calls himself a Hollywood whore. And when the guitars finally rev up on the hook, it's hard not to appreciate the desperate fuck-up trying to live hard with his half-hearted plan to grow up eventually. I mean, I can't say I liked how the vocals were processed on the outro, but I do think this is gonna go off pretty well live, and otherwise is mostly enjoyable. It's not great, but I think it's pretty good. Not a bad song. I'll say it. Number 89, Better by ZAYN.
Give it a try, or I'll say goodbye while it's right.
This is gonna sound crass, I admit it, but I didn't even realize ZAYN was promoting any new projects. I think that everyone forgot that Icarus Falls dropped in late 2018, and yet now he's got a new album coming with this as the lead-off single, and oh my god, it's built off an interpolation of You Light Up My Life, that soundtrack dud that somehow ruled the 70s and inspired one of the best one-hit Wonderland episodes from Todd in the Shadows. Now what's more distracting is that instead of leaning into all the heavenly effervescence of the original, which you think would be obvious, ZAYN brought in a lumpy hip-hop groove with some really badly mastered bass that fractures the washed-out creaking guitars, and honestly reminds me a lot more of a Kane Brown reject than anything, which might make a little bit of sense, because he's also trying to frame this as a hookup song, where even he seems to realize they don't really fit together, but he's in love, he's gonna try to make the attempt anyway. It's just really clunky in a surprisingly ugly way, and while ZAYN remains a decent enough singer, the production and content gives him nothing to really work off of here. It doesn't flatter him, and in comparison to what both Niall and Harry are doing right now, ZAYN has fallen behind considerably. And in a week, I won't remember this exists. Let's move on. Number 88, You to Love by Ne-Yo and Jeremiah.
I don't want nobody else.
It feels like it's been a while since I've seen either of these names, which for Ne-Yo is very true, as I've long suspected his run kind of ended in 2018 when that album went nowhere, but Jeremiah's also been pretty quiet for a while too, with the last time he saw the Hot 100 was on Wale's On Chill, and that collab with Ty Dolla $ign the previous year that I think everybody forgot about. But hey, 2 names in R&B, they team up, both have the potential to deliver, and you know what, it's pretty good, leaning into that sharp 80s R&B synth sample as both guys get on their Sex Jam vibe, which is not helped by Jeremiah's jerky flow with too much auto-tune, and how he references one of his best songs by name, as saying how his girl should be Team Us on a song where he's singing with another guy. Now frankly, even though I'm not that big of a Ne-Yo fan, I never have been, he probably could have handled this himself easily. He kind of runs away with the track, even if I think he probably should be above that Netflix reference. But the odds odd thing with this is that even for a collab, it doesn't seem like it's attracted a ton of attention, but it also has the radio because these are both safe and established acts, so this might actually stick around. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't debuted on the Hot 100 before now, and whatever, it's fine. I'm not gonna complain about this. Number 50, Bloody Valentine by Machine Gun Kelly.
This night like it'll happen again. You'll be my bloody Valentine tonight.
Okay, aside from the fact that I think we as a society owe Megan Fox a big apology for all the nonsense she had to face in the late 2000s and early 2010s, this song is still pretty damn great even outside of the video. I like the slightly more liquid guitar relic behind the slicker verses that ramps up the intensity into the overcompressed synth gloss of the hook. I mean, it's pure, clumsy pop-punk plastic, but is surprisingly sticky in how Machine Gun Kelly tries to make the moment work with some swagger and then catches feelings along the way. Hell, he sounds as clueless and shocked about the whole damn thing as anyone else here. That's part of the reason why this works. And when the mix ramps up the blocky compression into the drums to eventually cut loose into the verses and hook, yeah, it's a cheap trick designed to build up an explosive moment, but I think it works. And again, the hook is genuinely great. Again, with Machine Gun Kelly, the trick is that it's transparently artificial and kind of mercenary until even he stumbles into something that's raw and real, and that's where the bizarre magic of this is. It's a great song. I hope it sticks around. Number 47, Epidemic by Polo G.
In the trenches yelling gang, gang, mob ties what I bleed. Don't claim to be a op, cause niggas die from that disease. He gon' let that 9 blow with ease.
Can somebody please tell Polo G's promo team that he can work on a single for longer than 3 or 4 weeks, and that constantly shoving out new ones while the radio is struggling to catch up is a really dicey move that risks overexposure, especially when they aren't gonna go further to find the meat in the content if the hooks don't pop. Hell, even in the streaming economy, that still might be true. Well, anyway, he's taken the unfortunate route of referencing an epidemic as to instantly date the song, but beyond that, I am inclined to like it because it's very much in the rod wave mold of melodic trap, some questionable bass mixing included, but Polo G is a much better writer, and off the melancholic guitars, he's splitting a lot of his frustration with the deaths in the street juxtaposed with how it seems like he is just dumping someone along the way who kind of became fake. And you know what, that might be an interesting parallel. Real street shit is killing folks around him, but he doesn't connect to the fakeness that he could live in celebrity, even as he could work and deliver in that world. And that contrast does make for an interesting moment that he's caught between these two spots, but it also has this lingering sour feel that reminds me in a weird way of how Young Boy Never Broke Again mashes up this sort of subject matter together. I mean, Polo G's a lot more cerebral, but there are some parallel emotions. Either way, song's okay. Nothing here references the pandemic, so I'm guessing the sickness he's talking about here is less literal, which is better, but I'm still waiting for him to take that next big step in terms of content and insight. I know he can, so I guess we'll see. Number 44, Forget Me Too by Machine Gun Kelly and Halsey.
Want me to forget you? Okay, forget me too.
No jokes. This song justifies the entire existence of that Machine Gun Kelly album, and it works for a lot of the same reasons that the other great songs there connect. There is some mercenary deflection of emotion where you can tell he's at least trying to deflect from any pain he might have on the breakup, try to be macho about it, but then Halsey shows up with a raw intensity that makes her sound like the second coming of Avril Lavigne, and such a natural fit for pop punk, you can wonder why she hasn't made the genre pivot herself years ago. More importantly, she's that kiss-off moment that hits MGK square in the face and shows just how toxic and self-destructive this relationship really was, but also paradoxically how much chemistry they have. There's actually some real bonding there. You can tell why it might have worked. It also helps that the guitars have so much nervy energy off the charging bass and slappy percussion. Again, it's overcompressed and a song that could have absolutely afforded to cut back on the cymbals to let the guitar sound a bit more raw on the hook. But again, for what it is, it kind of kicks ass. Easily one of my favorites on the album, and if this does not get a video or a push as such an obvious single, everyone will have fucked up here, because this is legit awesome. And finally, number 1, Franchise by Travis Scott featuring Young Thug and M.I.A.
Before you write me,
boxes of checks, not my Nikes.
Am I the only one who really cares that MIA got her #1 for this and not Paper Planes? Again, it shows how much the charts are a glorified stat pad that rarely, if ever, properly measures the cultural impact of a song, but this in particular, you know, I kept feeling that it should work way more than it does because in part, I think the production's really great. No, seriously, that buzzy bass playing off the creaking quasi-industrial scratches and the haunted vibe, it's a great compliment for Travis Scott at his moodiest and angriest. This is gonna go off live, and when he starts switching up his flow by the final verse and gets a little faster, it was clear he was trying to make this sound way cooler than it actually is when you look at some pretty flimsy flexing in the lyrics. But alright, fine. Travis Scott has always been way more about the attitude than the substance, even if this really does call for a more distinctive hook, but he could have carried this on his own, so I think the problems might actually come with the guest stars here. Now, you all know I am no big fan of MIA, I've said it a number of times, but she could have worked over this production. Shame that even by the standards of sloganeering that makes for her most potent songs, her half-ass verse can't even rise to that. Young Thug, on the other hand, just does not bounce off this production in the same way at all, especially as his flexing feels weirdly precarious as he tries to cram his bars in full of ad-libs, especially by the end of his verse. Honestly, I think this is one of those cases where the production is so damn potent, I would rather hear so many other rappers on this and remixes before the original. I mean, can you imagine hearing Nicki Minaj, or Future, or hell, even Kendrick Lamar on this? It would be nuts! Now, overall, I like this more than I thought I would, but it's too openly flawed and falling short of its potential for me to fully get on board. It's not bad, though. I don't mind this. But also for our week, yeah, the best are both going to Machine Gun Kelly. I can't believe I'm saying that. But Forget Me Too with Halsey is easily getting the top spot, with Bloody Valentine as the honorable mention. Again, I'm still kind of surprised I'm saying that. And the worst is stunningly easy this week, with the Put Your Records On cover by Ritt Momney is easily the dishonorable mention, and that trash song that I refuse to name from Tory Lanez remains the worst of the week, possibly the worst of the month or longer, and again, very much trash. If this charted enough to push back a return of Joji's best songs, something went very wrong here. But next week, let's see what falls out, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll get the setup a little bit better here, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse.